because that was good.
Yeah. So I mean, that kind of took up most of the day. My sister-in-law was supposed to come in on Friday. Her plane got delayed because Friday it snowed. So we were all happy about going snowmobiling and not getting stuck this week. So, hello guys. This week is a lot less hectic, except I'm much more accident prone.
Accident prone. All right, we're gonna have to look at that. All right, but before we do that, let's say hi to everybody in the audience. This is Spilling Ink. We are the talk show that takes you behind the book to meet the authors and professionals in the publishing industry. And today, we're going to try and read the stars. We're going to see what's in store, what we've been through, predictions from last month, how those turned out, and just kind of have a fun show.
Yeah, we're going to try.
We're going to try. And we've actually
tell
brought
me I'm going to fall on my face.
No, you're not going to fall on your face. Positive vibes here, positive vibes. But we do have extra help today.
Yes.
Renee's here to help us figure out what's going on, to give us an extra set of eyes on the chart and her interpretation skills as well.
Yes, hi. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hi. We're glad to have you, Renee.
Thank you so much. I just really appreciate being here and definitely excited to talk about what the retrograde Venus and Mercury have yielded so far.
Yeah, you were on that show in the chat room with us that last time that we were doing this, and that was kind of an impromptu show, and it was an interesting one. We made some predictions, and I believe Jane, we were talking about you having maybe some difficulties in daily scheduling and writing.
A little. I think we talked about that. I ended up not really having difficulties in writing, but I ended up changing the end of a book because I'm like, is it a little too dark? Yes, we're going to rewrite the stars. That's our job.
I don't have that kind of power.
So, I did shift gears.
Okay.
Which was, I had written the entire ending and I, sent it off to my beta reader and I said, is this too dark? and knowing, I'm like, why do I even ask that question? I should know better. And I'm like, I can't have it this dark.
But that's okay if it was meant to be dark.
It is certainly an apt description of Venus and Pluto together. Venus did, think of Pluto as like the lord of the underworld, and there's definitely no light down there, and there's some inky depths. Venus did station right after hitting Pluto and then go backwards. So it's definitely a timely, it's appropriate to wonder something like that. If we view this through an astrological lens, that would be what that kind of astro weather flavor would be like. Oh, is it too dark? And then Venus stations retrograde in the sky also to become a morning star. So, here we are playing with dark and light as well and rewriting the ending. And it has proceeded forward. So that makes a lot of sense, especially when it was the ending, because Pluto is a lot about endings and death. And even Capricorn, like the sign of Capricorn is the structure of the thing, before it's published. Make sure we've got it's got solid bones. It's set the way that you want.
Right. And I sent my beta reader the second version too. I said, I think that was a little too dark because I sent it out to her and then I was like, ooh. And then it took me like a day and a half to rewrite the ending with a different, less dark. It's still dark, but it's not as, hideously dark as the first version.
We went from like a 10 to an 8 or like a 10 to a 5.
We went from a 15 to probably an 8.
Jane, it's not dark enough. Make it darker. No, I don't think it ever goes that way.
No, but I did write a clean romance.
You wrote a romance during this time?
Well, that was back in December. But
okay.
yes.
Okay.
I finished Belle, which is another romance. Yes. I finished 2 books in January.
Okay, so you've been actually pretty dang productive.
Yes, once the story flows on both of them, I've been productive. Yes.
Yeah,
and
and
now
I
I'm
remember
writing 2 more books.
you were leaning one way or another. Like
Right.
you wanted to write one book, but you kept being pulled to focus on the other book.
Yeah, exactly. It was a struggle to finish Belle. It was not a struggle to finish Wicked Heart, which was the
Okay.
one that was pulling me. And the one that I want to do versus the one I have to do and have the duty to have a whole bunch of other people for, it was a struggle. Because I'm like, I got to get this one done. But this story. And I bought a pre-made because this story, the main character guy in it needed a prequel. So it was just like, oh my God. So yes, I struggled with focus.
Okay.
So
now I know when Mars was in Sagittarius, that there was a lot of unfocused Mars energy happening. Without
Sagittarius
direction.
is all the things.
Yeah.
So Mars is doing in the sign of all the things. Yes.
And it's that fire sign, so it's just jump on this, jump on that, jump on this, jump on that. So that's very unfocused energy. But Mars entered Capricorn, I want to say it was just a couple weeks ago. And that should have driven some more focus back into your life, because Capricorn is where Mars is exalted. So Mars gets, a little extra bonus points towards being able to use Mars's specific energy more productively.
Yeah.
Yes. Mars plus Saturn sign of Capricorn especially equals ambition. So the tendency tends to be to overdo it. But for people who've needed a boost to get up and go, particularly after all that scattered energy that we had with Mars and Sagittarius, which is all about vision, but think of like the brainstorming, of a big project or 10 big projects. And then when Mars is in Capricorn, the rubber hits the road. You have the Saturnine element of like saying no, which means you cut the cruft. You set the 10 projects aside and you do the one or something like that. It's very down to business and doesn't really stop, sort of pushes through the pain. It's kind of like a good pain, but I mean, it can be a little too much at times.
We've got some good comments in the chat here.
Yeah, I was going to say, was anything going on not yesterday, but a week ago?
Let's bring up the screen. I'll bring up the
transits.
And we can kind of look at the day.
And cranky that day.
Now,
I'm usually not.
Understand that this is going to just be the generic transits, because we're not putting it against a specific natal chart. So,
what was the day? Just last week?
The Friday. Hold on. I think it was Friday the 4th.
Friday the 4th.
Oh yeah, that was when Mercury station direct. So, ending its long retrograde cycle, full speed ahead.
Okay, so that day I was cranky. I was impatient, and I could feel like the hostility with my day job, and
Moon in Aries. Moon in Aries can be, that's just
the moon is your emotions. So
and kind of like day-to-day happenings,
Yeah, and that's every 2 days it's going to change signs, and as it hits the different signs, you may find that certain signs trigger certain things. I mean, we kind of all live in cycles as it is, and sometimes you can
I recognized something wasn't right with me, that day, because I normally don't get that vocally ranting, put it that way, after a phone call. And Derek came in and he's like, "Are you having a bad day, honey?"
For you, I believe this is happening in your 7th house.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, on your chart, Capricorn's your 6th house. Aquarius was your 7th house. So that's dealing with your day-to-day drudgery and your one-to-one relationships that are all kind of tying this energy together. So that would make sense.
Yeah, because that, and then, you know, when the day was over, I was like, okay, you know, just let it go. and I was fine the next day. So
all right.
I froze the next day.
Let's see, we got Margaret wants to know if there was anything going on February the 8th. Let's see.
Yes, the moon did pass over Uranus, but it's still considered conjunct. You know, it's about it hit Uranus the day previous, and also you've got a really close Mercury conjunction with Pluto. So I guess the question would be, can you be more specific?
Mars and Uranus right here.
Mars and Uranus square as well, perfecting.
Yep.
So what do you mean by anything significant?
Without knowing the actual natal chart, we don't know what house systems it correlates to, and the house systems will give us the topics that these transits could apply to. It helps define them.
Also, just some general context can direct towards just the planetary themes as well.
Looking for relationships. Well, it's going to depend which houses correspond to your relationships. Usually house 5, house 7 can correlate to new relationships in house 5, flings, because that's the house of passions and creativity. And then house 7 is going to be your one-to-one relationships. So that's usually the more longer-term romantic relationships. So without really knowing what those houses are for you, I can't say for sure, but there was definitely something being triggered with Uranus and Mars, both like at degree.
Do you know your rising sign, Margaret?
That's what's fun about this too, is it's learning how to read the chart. It's like almost reading hieroglyphics, because the symbols mean different things depending on where they're placed, what they're next to, and how they connect to something else. And it's like learning a fun new language to be able to read these.
Yes, there was a question earlier, just while we wait for
Did Margaret. I miss one?
Oh, did you? I just wanted to speak to a concern about not looking ahead when there were good things happening. And I just want to talk a little bit, and I would love input also from anyone else who knows about astrology, you, Katie, or anyone in the chat. The approach of an astrologer is not to set the future in stone, is not to ruin any good things, or even necessarily to, say any difficulties are, going to be solved by astrology. What astrology does is it offers context and understanding and meaning, so that the patterns of the past and the experiences of the present can inform the future understanding. There is a continuous dance in philosophy and astrology between free will and determinism. Astrology would say free will and fate, which is more or less unsettled. It's going to be a little bit different depending on the flavor of the astrologer. But I think most astrologers who practice professionally recognize that there is a certain vulnerability to questions about future. And we do our best to respect that space. And, just to give some, the idea is that a client leaves the astrology practice feeling more empowered about who they are, more understanding about their lives, and they can take what they've learned forward, not more fearful or more confused, etc. I hope that speaks to the comment. I missed it. It was a few minutes back.
I like that. And it's, I know people want to see, what is the actual future, and really it's not about knowing the actual future. It's about kind of getting an idea of what patterns are repeating, what situations,
what challenges, challenges you might face based on, the crossing of the planets, or the, conjunctions, or the retrograde. We've all heard, oh my God, Mercury's in retrograde, but until I had you do my reading, I really didn't understand what that meant. And, so for the general public, Mercury in retrograde doesn't mean a whole lot with, in any context, unless they've done astrology, or had their chart read.
And life happens in patterns. If we don't learn from history, we repeat it. So you're going to be running into a lot of the same energy patterns over and over again to see if you've learned, if you've been able to grow and move on. So that's kind of why astrology works, is because it's showing you the pattern.
Yeah.
And if you can read the pattern and be better prepared, or look and see how you reacted in the past, how you can react differently this time, you can grow, you can change, you reach your potential. But it's not like a crystal ball. I can see exactly what's happening in the future.
It's almost so like nice. check and adjust based on your
check and adjust. I like that.
Check and adjust.
That. Yes, that's perfect.
See where you are, feel the temperature of things, and adjust. In the middle of it on Friday, I couldn't do anything, but afterwards I'm like, I wonder if something, if I'm missing something bigger than me that's impacting me.
Well, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I had an interesting weekend last weekend that correlated perfectly with how the transits lined up in my chart. And I had fully intended to get a jump start on a new contract that I was working on. I was like, I got an extra couple of days. I can get this started. I can get ahead of the game and not always be running behind like I am. And of course, set a plan. The universe is going to laugh at you.
Yeah.
My daughter found a scholarship, a really good scholarship. So she's going culinary. That's what she wants to do.
Yeah.
And this is a full ride with mentoring, with, they do etiquette classes and everything to really groom the person to be a executive chef, to be able to run these restaurants. And I live in Vegas, where we've got every flavor you can think of, every type of food, every type of restaurant. So this is the perfect place for her to do it. So when she found it, she's like, I got to get this stuff turned in by Monday. Help. I'm a writer. So she handed me her 3 pages of word spew, because that's, she's learned from me. Word spew, we'll fix it afterwards. And I spent the entire weekend, and I don't even think I really slept, writing the essay, sending it out to friends, because again, being a writer, we've got a lot of writer, author, editor, you name it, people who can look this over and give me feedback. And I said, I need this back as soon as possible. I got to get this perfect. It's got to go out on Monday. And you know what? Everybody rose to the occasion and they helped. It was great. So it was a lot of back and forth. My emails were just pinging all day to the point where it was driving me crazy, but I had to answer because that's somebody responding. That's a direction I need. So 2 days straight of just working on this project. And I ended up, she ended up with 2 different versions of the essay at the end to choose between whichever she wanted to use.
Okay.
And it was, ready for a final pass over on Monday before she sent it out. And what's funny is, I'll see if I can pull up the transits on this one.
The Monday chart does actually have Moon tightly conjunct Uranus, depending on the time of day, if we do like the afternoon. But it would have passed over exactly, also trine Mars. So a lot of activity, a lot of doing. And
there was, it was just nonstop work. So we've got Jupiter, which I know this is just the general chart, but Jupiter in Pisces is my 5th house. What is that? That's creativity and children. So big, expansive project involving my child that used the creativity. Uranus is in Taurus, which is my 7th house. That's one-on-one relationships. What was I doing? I was emailing people, getting feedback immediately. Uranus is the planet of change. So as I was like working on this and emailing it out, getting the stuff back, it was just a constant communication between that 5th house creativity and that 7th house of relationships. And what was I doing? I was writing. That's my 3rd house. Where are all the planets? They're all in Capricorn right now. So you got Mercury, you've got Venus, you've got Mars, you've got all of the elements working to write this perfect essay and to rewrite it. And Mars is slashing through the edits. It's like the astrology lined up so perfectly. It was hilarious.
So that's Cancer in the 9th and Virgo in the 11th, Katie?
Yes.
So the 11th house of, they call it the king's money. So like aspirations, right? That's Mercury space, Mercury in the 11th house, asking for allies. And then the moon conjunct Uranus in your 7th, ruling the 9th house of higher education. And that's actually the place of Jupiter's exaltation. So it all kind of fits together, the whole, all of its pinballing.
And the Pluto element is that it completely derailed me. And what's funny is I'm in a Pluto square right now. So not only was it derailing me currently, it was also reflecting back on my 12th house where I didn't have this opportunity. I'm working to give her an opportunity I didn't have. So it was just, it lined up everything so perfectly.
Yeah, that Pluto Square it changes depending on generational, because Pluto has an elliptical orbit, but those born with Pluto in Libra will generally have a square around this time. I will give my own age away. They'll have a square around their 40s. So.
Yeah, I'm a little older. I'm a little older than you all. You're just youngins. Yeah, no, I what did mine look like last weekend? Or this past weekend?
Let's see.
Last
Can
weekend.
I throw your chart up here? Let's see.
I don't care. I have no problem with that.
All right, so that's Friday. Yeah, your 6th through 8th house is just lit up. And you've got that connection to your career house. So it looks like the Jupiter connection in Pisces, that's outside resources, is connecting up with your career house, which is 10 degrees. So Uranus is dangling right over the midheaven there. So I would definitely have said it pinged something at work or something in your work life. Because last time we said 10th house is what you're known for doing. Usually that's the career. And the midheaven kind of adds like extra emphasis. So the midheaven can sometimes fluctuate between the 9th, 10th, 11th. Occasionally you can see it go wider, but usually 9th, 10th, 11th. And that adds extra emphasis to that house as far as the path of your career direction is, what you're known for doing.
You said you had a phone call that day? Is that what it
well
that you were saying?
My whole day job irritated me that day. I mean, I that day I was a meeting to meeting to meeting, and I had to shift gears every half hour.
Sun Saturn conjunction
and Mars Uranus as well.
Yeah.
And then I just got irritated because somebody wasn't letting me do what I do best. So
relationship wise, the Sun Saturn conjunction would have been like a kind of hitting the brakes.
That does actually sound like it. If another person is saying you can't do that, then generally there's the planet that says no. It usually says no. I suppose it is a neutral no, but we often feel it as a painful no. Sometimes it is a conservative and careful no.
In a day chart like hers, I think it would be that helpful no, that limiting to avoid a bigger problem kind of no.
Probably,
but it can feel aggravating though, particularly if the doing is it stops a flow. That can really aggravate, or it stops a sense of like if we look at the doing as
it was more of a redo of stuff. So it was just like but and then Saturday was just a fun day, but cold. And then we did all the family planning for wills and trusts and stuff that evening before the show last week. So and then Sunday was just fun. And
was that the night of the conversation that wasn't a happy one?
No, that was the day before. The Friday was the day that he came out and said, "Are you having a bad day?" Because I was just muttering, ranting, and
I kind of like that Mars is approaching Venus at that point, and you can almost see like it's, even though Mars and Venus are two separate energies, when they come together, they can definitely be a force for good. They can be a light a fire under your butt. So I wonder if that Mars approaching Venus is somewhere in there, like maybe your husband, for example, had recognized he was a little too rash, and maybe he should come back gently and work with you. More symbolic than actual reading, but it's kind of interesting to see how in that house of just drudgery, Mars is starting to approach Venus. And we're about to see Mars and Venus holding hands and walking through your 6th house and 7th house for the next 60-ish days, and then even then they still stay close together until April.
So that's interesting. So
it can go one or two ways. You can get chaotic Mars and an overblown Venus. So you got a Mars that wants to just do all the things right now, and a Venus who wants to make everything perfect her way. Or you can get a Mars and Venus that come together and work for the same goal.
I'm hoping it's the second one. Because things are getting, nice and calm and peaceful. The calm before the storm.
Margaret says she's sorry.
Season.
Yes.
First house is where your ascendant is.
It is below the horizon, on the circle below the left horizon. That's the way the chart is laid out. That's correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just saw that and I didn't want her to think
we
we
were
ignoring her.
Like, okay, what was that? Yeah.
So you said calm before the storm. So are you expecting turbulence?
Life changes possibly coming. Depends on how some of the things that we're talking about play out.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. It depends on a lot of the things on this chart too. So we made plans for the eventuality of something going wrong while we're in the house. So we wanted to make sure that the in-laws were taken care of, because we live with my in-laws. We bought their house. They live in an apartment in the basement. So all of that, we were like, oh, we've got to take care of that. So we had the need to do that this month, because it became more of a burning need when we got back from our trip to South Carolina, because we were flying. It was like, ooh, we don't have anything in place if something happens. So my husband was like, we got to. And I'm like, okay. So we sat down and hashed that out.
One thing that's interesting I'm noticing in your chart is all of the planets are focused on this area right now. So you're getting all of that outside energy is where the focus is. And that's pretty much the whole year where that focus is, because the sun, yes, will go all the way around. Mercury will go all the way around. Venus and Mars are going to go most of the way around, because Mars is going to get caught up in the 11th house for about 6 months, starting in around August. So I mean, it's this half of the chart that's getting most of your energy, and this is the house. These are the houses that deal with all the outside stuff.
The 11th is allies, aspirations, and can be your own aspirations. It can be aspirations that others have for you. The idea is that what happens in the 11th house, the vision and the help that you need, that feeds into the 10th house of completion. Like you could think of career completion, but just think of things that culminate. The aspiration is the vision of, and the 10th house is it's real, right? So the 11th house, Mars going back and forth in Gemini is going to happen for everybody. later this summer and into the fall, and even to the rest of the year. And that means that, well, we can look at it as having an initial, I suppose, plan of action that then gets revised, but this takes quite a while. In Gemini, Mars in Gemini tends to have it's all the thoughts, all the, it's very unfocused, but at the same time, it can actually stir up really useful thoughts that maybe had not been categorized as useful before. It's kind of like throwing things at the wall and seeing if they stick, but also throwing things at the wall is really fun, or something like that, right? There's certainly no information is bad information. And so back and forth, when it comes to information to be acted upon, that may undergo a shift. In the 11th house, maybe there's a bit of fluidity with who comes in with the resources that you need. Maybe the resources you need, there's something shifts or something changes and different resources are needed. Or the resources needed you need to act differently, or something along those lines.
Mercury also rules her 6th house too. So a lot of that work and allies could be tied together with that energy that's being drawn in, but it's going to be there for a little while. So there's some revisions happening.
Interesting.
But again, everything is being placed in the social side of your chart. So you're dealing more with the outside world and its
outside influences than inside influences. Okay.
Exactly.
Which I have a lot of big releases later this year. From book standpoints and things like that. And I rely on everybody else for sales, all the outside influences and how I get the word out and things like that. So, okay. And that is where my focus has been a lot in the writing world, is trying to get more visibility.
Your nodes say the same thing as well, too. You've got the North Node in your 10th house, your career house. The South Node is sitting in the personal house, the home sanctuary. So with the North Node, that's the energy that's expanding, and the South Node is more contracting or paying less attention to it to focus on the North Node energy. So again, that's the more social, the less personal. So it seems like, and from knowing you, I would say there's a lot of preparations going on for the future, and that's why this focus has to be where it's at.
Right.
But that's just me knowing you. That's not me reading your chart.
Right. And that, because things that,
the stars are aligning with your plan at this point, it seems like.
Yes.
If we think of preparations as a theme, just as a general theme, and then Jane, in your chart, the 6th house is the daily routine. That's where the Mercury retrograde and Venus retrograde have been happening. So one way we might look at that is simply getting those things in order before continuing on. The 6th house is not so much, it is social, I suppose, in that is where we experience subordination, whether it's employees who work under us or things that we are duty bound to, that sort of thing. But if a person is self-employed, for example, they're their own boss, they don't necessarily have employees, it's in their dedication to the craft, and service, then, we can also think of injuries and sickness, because that's Mars's place, and sometimes that happens. However, getting all of those things together with Venus and Mercury going back and forth, what are the values related to the work that you do every day? And what is even, how do you conceptualize the work that you do every day and communicate, even in your own mental script, the work that you do every day? And how does that structure change? That then can, I guess, I would think of it as tying up loose ends, so that the rest of the year can proceed without having to go back, if that makes sense.
That actually does.
Right.
Yes.
Astrology works, y'all.
Yeah.
I love that.
So what else, Katie?
What else indeed? Okay. I did make a few notes.
Where are we going now?
Well, because I wanted to look and see what the major transits were for the month. I mean, I know we're middle of February as it is. And we still have quite a bit going on. That Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces are just really lit up right now. So wherever those fall into your chart, that's where a lot of energy is being focused. So this weekend we would have had the Mercury and Pluto conjunction. So that could have been a lot of alterations in ideas, sometimes dark thoughts, sometimes it could be quick to get angry, quick to feel insulted, but it's a quick transit, so it passes. Probably, actually, I think it's done right now, or it's separating enough that it shouldn't be as strong. So any negative energy could have been that, you're feeling that wherever that house is for you.
Words of power too.
Could be.
And Capricorn is, let's think of like the bare essentials. So I'm thinking like an aphorism, just a short phrase that's really potent and has a lot of layers to it and depth that you sit and mull over for a while. Among other things, Mercury, Pluto together in, whether it be conjunction or trine, square, opposition, tends to communicate powerfully. Can be darkly, not necessarily darkly, but if we bring in darkness in a different way, illuminate that which is hidden, which is sometimes really uncomfortable and sometimes cathartic. However, Capricorn is pretty sparse by nature. So that could be 5 words that you hear or you speak that suddenly is almost like a spell. It just has weight to it.
It can also show up too as a lack of sensitivity.
That's true as well, as in speaking the thing that really doesn't need to be spoken and just hurts.
Yeah.
That's also possible.
But again, quick transit on that one. So we're in the separating phase from that anyways. So should be over and done with. Next up, we've got Mars and Venus conjoining, which they are, I believe they're conjoined right now. Let me change this to today. Yep. We're at 14 degrees now. And this is going to be happening for a while. And this is that one I said that it can go either way. It can be chaotic, do all the things, and Mars and Venus are not on the same page. Or it could be Mars and Venus on the same page, working towards, the greater good for you, lighting that fire under your butt, giving you direction, depending on how it plays out. But this is still in Capricorn, so we're still in Saturn's home. Mars is exalted here, so Mars is a little bit stronger. Mars is applying to Venus right now, so Mars is kind of in the superior position. Mars will pass Venus, and then she will kind of come back. They'll catch up to each other, and you'll get the softer side of this once they've passed this initial conjunction. But right now, it's kind of an aggressive start because Mars is in that superior position. So again, could be chaotic energy, or it could be that fire lit under your butt with, now I know what I need to do.
Or now I have the storylines in my head and they're just running.
That's good.
And you're trying to harness them because you don't want them to run too fast and forget it.
If we look at the context of Venus and its retrograde, this also, Venus did retrograde right as it conjoined Pluto. And Venus-Pluto, for pop culture reference, very Venus-Pluto would be Machine Gun Kelly and Megan Fox. Their kind of love is pain, engagement. She has an engagement ring that if she takes it off, it will cause pain. This is very Venus-Pluto Capricorn flavor. Venus by itself next to Pluto can get a bit of a beating. That happened December 19th was the Venus station retrograde right on top of Pluto, and then backward tracking until January 28th, where Venus stationed at 11 degrees of Capricorn and went forward. And now going forward after this confrontation with dark, whatever that means, it could mean a ton of different things. Mars comes up. Mars is feeling, let us say, very righteous. Mars is very comfortable in Capricorn, ambitious, ennobled. One could say a bit entitled, confident, and that can feel overbearing or just what a bit of a battered Venus needs. It could be all of these things at once in different areas of one's life, and they'll travel together back and forth, more or less the same speed until April. I need to double check that.
They separate, I think, to like 6 degrees in, I think it's March 30th, and then they stay around that until I think April 5th is when they finally separate, and she goes into Pisces.
Venus will go into Pisces, and that will be a totally different flavor. Venus is just as comfortable in Pisces as Mars is in Capricorn. In any case, the pair of them will actually conjoin Pluto together, which is a different situation than Venus's first pass and retrograde station. So that dark is kind of, I like to think of it as there being a certain measure of protection, or at least a measure of balance or fight involved. Definitely intense though, packs a punch.
April 5th is when my next series is coming out. I'm like, don't tell me something bad's going to happen on April 5th. So yeah, Wicked Heart comes out then. That's the one that I changed the ending for. So
because it was too dark.
It was too dark. Yes. Now, it's still dark, and Rebecca will attest to that, but it's not as dark as the first version.
Speaking of the journey that Venus and Mars are going to take, it's not just Venus and Mars walking by themselves. They make quite a few touches with other planets. So while they're conjoined right now and happily walking together, it's not going to be long before we've got a sextile to Neptune. So roughly, I want to say around the 22nd, 23rd, they're going to make that touch to Neptune, which is in Pisces. So that's going to change the flavor of their journey. When you get Neptune involved, you get a lot of dreamy, idealistic, maybe out of touch with reality, but it can also be imaginative. It can be inspiring. Again, depends on how the energy plays out. So you're going to get a little bit of a tweak to how this Mars and Venus conjunction happens more towards the end of the month, with a little out of this world flavor, I want to say.
Okay.
I see this situation as ripe for misunderstanding, and also potent in its ability to make connections in the subtle realm. So I don't really want to say like delusion or imagination necessarily, but that which doesn't exactly, you can't pin it down. Neptune is the fog. It obscures. As such, it's difficult to see. Like when you're in the fog, you don't see it right up in front of your face. You only see that something is obscured. And then if you're far enough away, you can say, oh, look, there's fog, so I'm actually really looking forward to it. I actually really enjoy Neptune. I have also heard Neptune described as being overstimulated. And in that sense, I would just say be mindful of being overstimulated,
Interesting.
Yeah. So like a sensory experience. So maybe watch the caffeine a little bit, or maybe, go to a quiet place, turn out the lights, lay down a little bit. Yeah. Maybe you fall asleep and you have the most amazing dream, and there's your next book.
It could be. There's that inspiration. Now, speaking of overstimulated,
yes,
Jupiter, who is at home in domicile in Pisces, sextiling Uranus in Taurus. And this is kind of just going on for a while. They separate a few degrees, and it's not a complete separation from their conjunction, but they do kind of get far apart, but they stay close enough together that the energy, because they're slow planets, are still going to be felt. And this is it's that energy of maybe being too rash, maybe jumping to conclusions, maybe wanting to see change, but not knowing how to apply the change. So Jupiter wants to expand. It wants to change. It wants to do all the things. And Jupiter's at home, but it's butting up against Uranus in Taurus. And Taurus is that grounded, stable, this is how we do things, Earth sign. Uranus is there changing the rules and shaking things up. And if Jupiter doesn't have the same direction as he did when he was in Saturn's sign, Saturn was kind of holding the reins and helping to guide. Jupiter's in his own now. It can be chaotic. It can expand too far. It can be a situation where you get in over your head. And this is going to be a longer transit. We're looking at between February 12th, so now through March 5th, of possibly needing to take your time. Maybe make sure you have a full plan before jumping in, because you could want to change. You have very good ideas for change. You could have good direction you want to go in, but if you don't have the plan to execute it, you can watch it crumble, and that can derail you.
I actually love this aspect because I'm a planner. I'm definitely I have benefited so much from this sextile, and I have benefited so much for the nodal shift into Taurus, and incredibly much from the Venus and Mercury retrogrades, both in their own ways, which were quite painful at times, but the way things work, if you see it through, you end up being much better at the end of it, and much more prepared to take on the sorts of things that you wanted. So how this plays out in my own life, I can just say that Uranus is in my 6th house. We've been talking about daily work, and my routine has gotten progressively more tailored to things that I actually need based on the understanding of what is required in my home. So there's, conversation between Jupiter in the 4th house of home and Uranus in the 6th house of routine. Likewise, the 2nd house, which is Capricorn for me, my resources have been getting a redo in a really big way. It started out with a lot of really bad news and a lot of concrete resources dropping out, and ended up with resources that I actually need, that suit the new routine. If that makes sense. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I totally think that I want this, but as it turns out, that's not practical to the new vision, the new requirement, the new respect for rest and activity. That said, Uranus brings upsets so that it can, the upset can be wanted and feel like liberation, or it can feel like someone has just shaken you up. It really just depends.
I'm actually hoping for some more direction, because I think I've got similar chart to you, except it's that one house over. So this is my 5th house and 7th house being pinged on these two. So I've got the creativity that is going up against the change, and the universe basically telling me I need to reach out to other people. And that's where my pain point is. I'm not good with that 7th house. And so it's like I'm being derailed constantly to force my hand to get some help on fixing my schedule and getting myself back on track, which is very painful.
Yes.
Because I'm fixed angles. I am the stubborn, will not change, cannot change, drag me kicking and screaming into the new way of doing things. And it sucks, because I know I need to. I can't wrap my own mind around how to do it.
Margaret has a question. That's actually the 12th and 10th houses.
Ooh. I see which are sex, death, magic, and career houses, right? I don't see the question before.
Can sometimes be 5, because that's passions. It can also be 8. It could also be part of relationships, and 7. Death is usually 8.
Can be 7.
Can be. Magic can be 8 and 12.
And
careers
4.
Usually 10.
Yeah, because she has 12th and 10th houses in the one before that. So, yeah. And then I think that the next, the witch art is from that.
Oh, here we go.
Jupiter sextile and natal chart.
Yes. So if you have a Uranus Jupiter sextile in your natal chart, then the astro weather is Uranus Jupiter sextile. So that the way I feel like describes it is it feels like normal. Other people might be like, oh my God. And you're like, what? This is what I feel like all the time, you know, kind of thing. People with really, really intense aspects, it's fun talking to them and they're like, yeah, now you know what I live with on a daily basis. So, oh, dang it. I missed the rest of that question because I got into answering it.
There we go. Yeah.
Definitely don't be concerned about not catching on. Astrology takes a very long time to become, it's a language to become fluent in.
Magic can also be 8 as well, because occult is partially in the 8th house. Could also be 9th house topics too, because that's the expanding your horizons, your higher education, and it really depends on how everything is configured, what it really means. So without actually looking at the natal chart, it's hard to make a guess.
We can describe that though. The 12th house would be magic that you enact in isolation or confinement. Maybe you go into an austere space or a space where you are definitely alone and magic happens there within restrictions. If it's in the 8th house, it might be magic that is collaborative in some way and involves other people. So a coven, perhaps, or just another person. The 4th house is also associated with the cult, and that might be more coven-like in that it would be home, the lowest, darkest part of the chart, the foundation, right? So this could be magic associated with your core self, sense of safety, and I think I might put a coven in the tarot. I wouldn't call that sex magic. That would be more, or if that was what you were talking about, we can separate those two. Magic in the 8th, I would bring in a partner or partners. So all 3 of those houses have just different flavors of that topic, if that makes sense.
I think in the 8th too, I always envision drawing down energy from the universe. That outside resource, pulling it in. It doesn't necessarily have to be another person, but it is that intangible resource that you're getting. She said the magic in the 8th. North Node, working towards a post-apocalyptic coven. Yes.
Excellent.
I like it. I like it.
And just so you are aware, there is planetary magic out there as well. There are some books in medieval times, and there are also some books in modern times. I guess I can email you guys some resources if you want, or if you know. I know that Austin Kopic's book is coming out sometime this spring.
Reprinted.
He's in the wrapping up the. He's just in the final stages. Yeah.
Well, I know he had another book that it sold out and it never got reprinted.
Well, this is 2.0. This is second edition of that book.
Okay, good.
So don't buy the first one. Wait for the second, which is coming out sometime, I think, in the spring, he said.
Okay.
That one's called 36 Faces. I haven't read the first version, so the first edition, but I will be getting the second.
Nice.
Yeah, as soon as that comes out, that's on my list. All right, we got one more to talk about. And this one, I know I said I was just looking at February, but I couldn't help. I had to look at March. March 3rd is the weirdest looking day, and I need to get some other takes on this because it just looks insane to me.
For just in general, or for me, or for you?
In general, the astrology of the day itself is crazy looking.
I mean, I'm excited. It's Sun-Jupiter conjunction is pretty nice. Mercury-Saturn conjunction means that it's serious. It's not a huge party. And then Mars-Venus-Pluto conjunction, well, at least Mars and Venus are together there. And then, I mean, the moon does have a really wide, has a wide berth. So you could almost just start the moon with Neptune.
It starts the day with the sun and ends the day with Neptune, I believe. So it's hitting everything in Pisces that day.
That is fabulous. I can't wait.
So I'm looking at the individuals here. In Capricorn, you have Mars, Pluto, Venus are all conjoined. To me, it looks like there's the ego driving desires. And that can be problematic. When Pluto is involved, we know that there's the potential for it to be a transformative. Even if it's a negative, it's going to help you grow, but it can be explosive.
For sure.
I mean, I'm seeing Mars, you get like the willpower, the drive, Venus, the strong desires for certain things. And which one's speaking the loudest? Mars is exalted still in Capricorn. So you've got that aggressive, Mars who could be driving this, and he's going to head first into Pluto before Venus gets there. I know we're looking at just the flat, screen right now, but throughout the way this transits, Mars hits first, then Venus comes afterwards.
So we've got the planet wielding the sword first, and then the planet of connection and grace and values second.
So maybe Mars is just going to plow through and Venus is there to kind of heal the wounds afterwards. I don't know. I don't know, but it feels chaotic to me. That's why I need other people's opinions, because I can do 2 planet transits okay, but when you start adding the extra in there, it diffuses the meaning too much for me. I'm still new at this.
I'm excited by this, actually. I feel like there's a sense of the inevitable here that has been building, because we've had the retrograde. Venus has already gone retrograde, is coming back, and then there's their slow march together to meet Pluto. But I would advise anyone who's intimidated to make sure they feel grounded. Make sure you're tethered to something that is solid. And there might be, I would like to think there is an ability to, I think of like lancing a boil. That might sound kind of gross, but just getting rid of stuff that really just has, causing a rupture in order for healing.
Okay.
So there's a momentary pain, and then there's healing that has not, been there or been able to occur for a long time. Or at the very least, there is some, at least what you're working with, kind of like things coming to light. Like, this is the situation. Okay. Well,
all right, I like that.
Now at least I know the lay of the land, or that sort of thing. I tend to get excited about the things that other people get freaked out about, like, hey, a Saturn transit, time to upgrade my life,
Okay,
but
speaking of, move on to Aquarius, Saturn and Mercury.
That's
conjoined right there in Aquarius. So you've got the planet of no with the planet of ideas and inspiration
or serious conversation, like, oh my God, I just lanced that boil, and you know what? Here is the truth I have to speak that's been bubbling under the surface for who knows how long. I'm gonna say it.
And
or someone's gonna say it to me. And then it's like, oh, I see this situation has tremendous gravity. But also, you're not necessarily dealing with, positivity that isn't helping, I guess, or even just trying to solve a problem in the wrong direction. And that's wasted work. Sun Jupiter is together. So it's like, wow, look, we actually know what to do about it too. Here's the opportunity. Yeah. Like, I'm so glad we had this conversation, man. That really sucked. But wow, look what we can do.
Yes, but so it
my
starts with
optimistic
Sun
view.
Jupiter. So it starts with optimism, and then it ends with the sun, or is it the sun, or is it the moon? It ends with the moon and Neptune. So you start optimistic and you end up with your emotions tied into disillusion
or expanded. Wow, I never knew I could feel beyond what I felt. Katie, you look so skeptical.
I'm like, no, I see bad. I see the day starting one way and ending very dramatically.
Well, I don't want to invalidate your view at all.
No, that's why I'm asking, because I'm needing extra opinions on this, because I'm not the end all be all. God knows, I know I need to learn so much more. But I mean, it really feels like it's gonna be one of those, like, you're going into war days.
Fair warning, you will get what I hope is a level-headed view, but ultimately always optimistic. So from me. So that's just, that's just my style.
I'm ruled by Saturn. It's always pessimistic with me.
I'm ruled by Saturn too. I just have Jupiter on the ascendant, or Jupiter.
I don't know what I'm ruled by, but I'm just cheery most of the time.
You're ruled by the sun. You've got a Leo ascendant. Cheery and happy, and our nice, straight guiding light.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, yeah.
And I'm like Saturn, like, no, it's all horrible. Shut up.
But I'm just like, the sunny little girl that's skipping through the flowers.
Well, you need that. You need both opinions to get the balance.
Yes.
You need to see the light and the dark in order to, come to what you think is the right.
It's funny that all of that's conjoined, hitting each other, and the timing of it, because that is one of our targets for conversations. So it's like, okay, all of that's coming.
Yeah, that's your 6th, 7th, and 8th house that's all happening in.
Yep. So that's where I'm like, okay, that, I know what's happening on some of those days. So, because we're doing certain things the beginning of March, and then, at the end of that week, there's a whole other conversation that has to happen. So it's like, oh, good God, okay. So either it's going to go very well or
no. But as Renee said, I like the lancing a boil. I think that's a very good way of looking at this. While there might be some initial discomfort, it's for the best, and it will promote the change, the healing, whatever. So I do like that. I think that's a really good way to look at it. And even with my pessimistic, oh my God, I don't want to go outside, that's going to be a horrible day. There's a purpose behind it. There's a reason all of this is happening.
Right. Exactly.
So and I would say there is support from the cosmos, right? It is supportive of a particular activity, such as having a difficult conversation and, lancing a boil or whatever. That's supported.
Absolutely. And on that note,
well, I've had fun. I hope you guys had fun.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It was wonderful. I'm so glad that you were able to jump on with us. I enjoy doing this. I think this is fun to be able to explore, the charts and the transits, and see, what we come up with, and, circle back in a month and see how it played out.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
I will be interested for sure. It will be.
You'll talk to me after anyway, because I'm not on next week or the week after.
Well, if you guys like this kind of content, you guys out in the audience, let me know, because we could make this maybe a monthly, one-off monthly show where we kind of play around with the stars and see what's going on. And Renee, if you would like to join us for that, I would love to have you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. This would be super fun. I will come with lots of planned notes, because I'm a planned person, but, lead the way and I'll do my best.
And speaking of that, where can people find you, Renee, so that we can make sure that they know where to look for you online?
You can't find me yet, so I'll tell you next time.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right.
All right. That's it for us this week, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below and we will get to those. And until then, everybody take care and hope the stars are working in your favor.
Bye.
Thanks.